Hi, I'm Mon Isberto, and this is Optics, the politics of perception. In this show, we take a look at what, how, and why the presidential candidates are communicating to the public, to the electorate. Now, this is the last episode before the actual elections on May 9th. So we'll be trying to take a look at what's been happening for the past several weeks, focusing on the two leading presidential candidates, that's former Senator Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and Vice President Leni Robredo, but also taking a look at the wider context, what's happening in the campaign and in the public.
Two joints.
Yung pinapangarap po nating bansa,
Pagandahin po natin ang ating minamahal na bansang Pilipinas.
Now, to help us analyze what's happening in the realm of communication, particularly the communication efforts of our candidates in the final days of the campaign, we are talking with leading professionals in the field of communications and advertising. First, bringing back on the show Amor Maclang, reputation architect and co-founder of Geyser Maclang Communications. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. How are you, Amor?
Very, very happy to be back, and congratulations on the run of the seminal show.
Yeah, well, we've been getting nice feedback because we do something strange here anyway. And with us to join us first time is Mr. Edwin Lacierda, co-founder of Paymongo, a fintech company, and CEO as well of DDI Strategic Communications, and in a former life, a presidential spokesperson. Welcome, Edwin. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mon, for having me.
Okay.
Love your show.
Now, exciting. Okay? Now, we usually start this with images. Okay? And let's take a look at what's the images that the two candidates have been showing in the last few days of the campaign. Let's start with former Senator Marcos. Let's take a look.
Sa aking mga kababayan, sa Mayo 9 ay gaganapin ang isa sa pinakamahalagang halalan sa ating kasaysayan. Nasa panahon po tayo ng matinding krisis at pagbabago, ng pandaigdigang krisis sa ekonomiya na likha ng pandemya. Presyo ng mga bilihin na nagtataasan sa kabila ng kawalang hanap buhay ng maraming pamilya na pinaigting ng pagtatalo-talo at bangayan ng dahil sa umiinit na politika. Maraming salamat. At huwag po nating kalimutan na sumunod pa rin sa mga health protocol at nasa panahon pa rin tayo ng pandemya. Bongbong Marcos po, numero 7 sa balot.
Okay, that's video number 1. Now let's take a look at video number 2.
mga kababayan, ilang araw na lang, malapit na nating makamit ang pinapangarap na pagbabago. Punong-puno ang puso ko dahil alam kong kasama ko kayo hanggang sa dulo ng krusadang ito. Ang aking pakiusap ngayon, walang bibitiw. Kasama kayo sa pagtatag ng isang gobyernong tapat sa May 9. At pag naiangat natin ang lahat, lalo na ang mga nasa laylayan, gigising tayo sa kulay rosas na bukas.
Okay. 2 videos, last picture, so to speak. Any reaction? Ladies first. Amor, what do you think?
All right. I'd like to start with that of Vice President Leni. What I've seen overall, when we were doing a scrape of her messages, is there seems to be a move towards a certain version of the unity and inclusiveness messaging, right? So she's morphed from yellow to pink and now a multicolored flower that tries to bring in all the colors and all the parties. And everyone's saying that, is it because the unity communications of the other camp, of the BBM camp, is gaining traction? Now, what I find a bit confusing is in this last appeal video, they kind of broke a cardinal rule, which is don't say anything beyond 2 or 3 top messages. I mean, they tried to do a salad of all the agenda. So I wonder if people actually would remember the one or two top things, as opposed to, say, that of BBM, where it was consistent from the get-go, singular-minded in approach, which is all about unity. And even if you're not on my camp, we're still in this boat together. So it's interesting.
Okay. Edwin, your take.
My take is both personalities have shifted their more prominently in the case of Bongbong, where the tonality of that particular video shifted from Bongbong the candidate to Bongbong the president. You can see that, for instance, in the way the podium itself is a indication
Yeah, it
of,
looks familiar, doesn't it?
right. And then you see the flag as well, and then you see also he's not holding a pinwheel. He's wearing polo barong, a very formal, at least formal attire for public officials. So you've seen the transformation, the morphing from the candidate to the president. And his appeal is very, very consistent, a call for unity, regardless of who you vote for.
Yeah.
In the case of Leni, there's also a shift because she's not wearing her traditional campaign, but the color is still the same pink, but there's a flag. So you see also an evolution. But however, her message continues to be calling for her campaign platform. Precisely, it's called Huling Panawagan. And yes, there's a lot of things that whether the voters can absorb, that's another question. But clearly, she's still in the last mile of the campaign and still preaching whatever she intends to do when she's elected as president. So I think both have, but more prominently, Bongbong has shifted. It's a sign of confidence.
Kumbaga, putting on different clothes.
Right.
A bit more formal.
Right.
Than their campaign.
Leveling up, maybe. Leveling up.
Okay, but then these are visual signals of the aspirations or the hopes or the confidence, depending upon how you analyze the visual signals. But how do you now assess in terms of the messaging? I mean, both of you have said that Marcos Jr. has not changed his thought. And Vice President Leni has tried to make an adjustment. Is that how both of you see the situation?
In my case, Bongbong has always been consistent because, based on FGD focus group discussions, unity has always been the aspiration of the Filipino people. Ayaw namin ang nagbabangayan, gusto namin nagbubuklod-buklod ang bayan natin. This is owing to the fact that the fatigue in the pandemic, a lot of problems before the election. So there's a yearning for unity, and that was present in all. Maybe perhaps Bongbong was very consistent and he dwelt on that. In the case of Leni, she wanted to show what her platform of government would be, to show perhaps a difference from what she intended to do. But the appeal to unity has always been there, but towards the end, in the sense of bringing together. It's not. I remember what she said was, hindi to unity ng politiko, but unity ng what binds us together, which is the love of country. So it's a natural progression towards that. However, she had to present herself first, unlike Bongbong, because there's so much disinformation that happened to her for the last 5 years. So she had to disprove all the allegations that she is competent, that she doesn't have a weak character, the two negative attributes that were attached to Leni.
It can be hard being a woman candidate, no?
I've always maintained that if there is one strength that BBM's campaign has done is knowing who to talk to. So given the fact that majority of those who are voting are 40 years old and under, he understands, or at least his team understands, what is candy. What is candy to this market? And it's all about, what is the general woke millennial sentiment, right? I don't want negativity. We want to be future looking. We need to move forward, right? And not attach ourselves too much to the past. Unity, positivity. So ironically, like I said in the first episode, it is actually Bongbong who's running a seemingly virtuous campaign.
Okay.
As opposed to, right, the seeming negativity that's coming from Vice President Leni, right? Which has been predicated on tearing down BBM.
Well, okay, we're on that. Before we continue, we have to take a break. We'll be right back, mga kapatid. Don't go away. Welcome back mga kapatid, and we're going to continue our discussion. Very interesting discussion. Last few days of this really hectic and unprecedented elections. Our guests, we have Amor Maclang and Edwin Lacierda here to help us discuss. Now let's take a look at something that's occupied a lot of people. It's all about numbers, but the numbers are also affecting the images of the candidates. Okay, on the one hand, you have several opinion polls saying that former Senator Marcos is ahead in decisive numbers. On the other side, you have social media metrics, Google Trends and others saying the opposite. And then you have others which mix the two, which say that we're in a dead heat race. How do you make sense of all of this confusion? Anybody want to take a crack at that? More.
See, the thing about Google Trends, the thing about social media in general is it's a dangerous echo chamber, right? Because we know that what we pander to or prefer will continuously be pushed to us, right, by way of algorithms. So it's dangerous to believe what we see in our feeds. The thing about the talks on trending in this particular search engine is what that tells you is interest. It doesn't necessarily tell you preference, no? So whether or not you feel positively towards a particular candidate just because you find something interesting about it, you will search it. But more importantly, what's dangerous there is if you take this as gospel truth, it already excludes the majority who do not have access to the technology, and more importantly, Filipinos, based on our study in the decentralized Web3 community, they don't do search. What they use for search is social media. Come on. The first thing that you check when you go online is actually social media and not even go do Google search. So it could be a dangerous thing to singularly look at.
Okay. Well, but let me add just a few facts or information there. Number one, the latest study showed that 75% of Filipinos are now on the internet, and most of them are on social media. And then number two, well, what do you say about the social media metrics? It's not just Google that have been predicting actually. The results of elections in the United States and in Canada and most recently in France, where President Macron's victory was predicted quite accurately by these metrics. What do you say?
The idea there is somewhat that Google Trends can better predict polls. But if you look at the FAQs of Google Trends, it says we're not a predictor of polls. Having said that, for someone who used to work for government, we really rely on the survey firms to see public sentiment. This is the only country where you see a variance of Google Trends and the polls.
Yeah.
In France, for instance, France's survey also said Macron was leading. However, there's a French law that prohibited them from publishing so many days before the election.
Okay.
But both Google Trends and the surveys showed Macron was leading.
They were synced.
Yes.
Okay.
Even in the case of 2016, Trump and Hillary, the surveys predicted it right that Hillary will win the popular vote.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with the system in the United States is the electoral college thing. It's a battleground stage.
Yeah.
It's not a popular democracy where the highest number of votes wins. There's an electoral college to determine it. So
in their case, Hillary won even though she had more votes.
Yes, lost even she had more votes.
Yeah.
But here in the country, this is the first time I'm seeing a huge variance between Google Trends and social media. My surveys, my thinking is where I'm coming from. Because the surveys are fundamentally D&E. I mean, mirroring the weighting of the population, A, B, C, D, E. So you've got a lot of DE, which comprises 90% or 78 and 39, almost 90%.
Okay.
So that's why that shows that the D class and the E class prefer Bongbong. In the case of the social media Google Trends, the question is who does the search? Because it's aggregated, it's anonymized. it's not, it doesn't,
There's no stratification.
catches own, there's no stratification, it doesn't catch if you're from ABCD, because there's no way of doing that because of data privacy. You won't know who really are doing the search.
One of the things that's very important towards the end, of course, are endorsements. No? Both candidates have been getting endorsements, but different. It's different in some ways, same in others. No? Let's take, for example, Senator Marcos. He's got, I think, a lot of endorsements from local officials. No? How does that add up to you from your point of view?
Conventionally, if you're talking about command votes, when you're getting politicians, you're essentially talking about command votes.
That's right.
Surveys capture the market votes. Command votes don't happen until the day of the election. But normally, in our experience, command votes would contribute around 5 to 10%.
Okay.
5%. So you're looking at 5% additional to what the market votes are. So, but that's where it is. I mean, the focus kasi of command votes really is more on the local. Sometimes the agreement is, sir or Gov, boboto namin sa inyo yung mga local na kandidato nyo, amin na lang ang national. So the command votes really is effective on the local level.
Okay.
As to the national, that remains to be seen. But by and large, we've seen, for instance, in past experience, past elections, it contributes around 5%.
Okay. Your view then?
I don't think the idea of celebrities or even incumbent office officials or presidents endorsing carry that much weight in a decentralized world, whether we care to admit it or not. Like I said, if we were going to pander to populist sentiments, then you will have a Pacquiao or even an Isko Moreno, who's a celebrity, right? Who will probably be faring better than traditional politicians. But such is not the case, because what we're seeing, and this might sound radical, is there seems to be a rejection of traditional gatekeepers. No? Edwin mentioned it, forking of traditional media and surveys and also social media. And what we need to recognize, and actually what I find very interesting in this particular election, is the reaction of the people. More than, totally. I mean, you see it, people are going into their own flash mobs, creating their own creative executions. The thick, palpable passion in this particular polls, I have not seen, right? I mean, I have not been working that long, right? But clearly, people taking it upon themselves to champion what they believe in without prompting. I mean, that's something that I have to give to what Vice President Robredo has done. Right now, the people are the message. It's not just the candidates. They have to do so little. Look at how Bongbong is not even reacting to debates or joining debates. But it's their army, either their Care Bears or their troll farms, wherever you want to come from, or even in the case of the Kakampinks, right? They're doing the messaging for their particular candidates.
Well, now that you mention it, it's really that aspect that's really kind of striking about these elections. No? Yung Abonado army has been very, very visible in so many colorful ways, not just
it's a function of it's a function really of resources. The Leni campaign was really built on the volunteers, primarily because they don't have political backing. Walang pera, walang political backing. A lot of because of one of the reasons why there were no political backing was Leni just decided late in the game. So there wasn't enough time. In fact, a lot of LPs left because they had to survive. They had to coalesce with someone who had a strong chance of winning. I suppose Bongbong and the Leni camp, Leni's volunteers were more. They have their own message. They would come up with their own messaging. In the case of Bongbong, it was very disciplined in terms of unity. I mean, that's they criticize it as so walang laman. But if you really know ang gusto ng taong bayan, unfortunately, gusto niya talaga pagbubuklod-buklod eh.
Well, sige, we have to take a break, mga kaibigan. Mga kapatid, don't go away. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back, mga kapatid. We're going to cap our discussion now on this final stretch of the campaign. And our guests, Amor Maclang and Edwin Lacierda, will help us try to finish this if we can. Okay, this is the home stretch. People will be voting tomorrow, so we will finally answer the questions that have been raised so far here. But how do you, if we summarize this, on the part of former Senator Bongbong Marcos, this has been a massive effort to rebuild the Marcos brand. How far has he succeeded, in your view?
If he wins the election, that's a confirmation of the year-long and so many years of efforts of rehabilitating the Marcos name. I mean, that's a plain and simple thing that he was able to convince the electorate that we had the golden years, we had all these things that they've been talking about.
Okay.
So, but that's basically it. I mean, it's the return of the Marcoses. But by the way, before that, they have already migrated. They were not viewed already by the people as just politicians. They were already viewed also as celebrities to a large extent. They have migrated successfully. That's why the admiration towards them is beyond politics. And that's why there's also, but years and years of...
So the storytelling has been going on for some time.
It's been going on for some time. But 2016, that's why when he decided to run as vice president, he could have won. But unfortunately, he didn't. But he didn't stop there, I suppose, because look at the way it happened. But providentially, I think the one reason why he has gained so much is because there was no one, Sara didn't contest the presidency with him. Because they were of the same, they had the same voter base to a large degree. Remember, before Sara declined to run for the presidency, Sara was around 28, Bongbong was around 24. So it was split. So, but when they consolidated, you also saw a consolidation of the North and South.
So this isn't just imaging and communications. This is also good old-fashioned.
Good old-fashioned political alliances, because that's always a standard rule that if you have the North and South with you, you definitely have a stronger chance of winning the presidency. Although we Filipinos tend to not elect presidents and vice presidents from the same party.
Amor?
Now, the elections will be tomorrow, and more or less it's a foregone conclusion, right? But who I feel really won in this particular election is the Filipino people, regardless of where you stand. See, I'm looking at the Philippine political landscape and how it swings seemingly every 30 years, right? So the first, at least from my visible runway, 1965 to 86, 30 years, Marcos-defined era. And then whether you agree to it or not, 1986 to 2016 was primarily an Aquino-led era, whether they're at the forefront or whether they are a kingmaker at the back end. So what we're seeing now is perhaps, should BBM prevail, will be a continuation of what is a new era. And I go back to what era was that Duterte ushered in 2016. It is really that decentralized movement. We don't want the historical into the traditional gatekeepers. And two, what Edwin said, people don't seem to look at the Marcoses as just the political family. It's more of like a part of your cultural firmament, right? So they're approached differently. So maybe what will happen now is that we'll see the ushering of another era, and hopefully we'll see you in 24 years.
but by the way, the pink movement that Leni has generated, this is something phenomenal. It's the huge rallies. Dati 20,000, malaki na. Now you're looking at more than 100,000.
Yeah.
So that pink movement, I don't think will falter, assuming Leni loses. That thing will continue. And maybe perhaps there will be the new...
A legitimate opposition.
Opposition which is not politically grounded, not part of any political parties. That's something new.
And we need that if we really are going to continue to be a democracy. We need that. So I hope we don't lose the passion that we all found ourselves in this particular election, whether you're for or against. And hopefully that can all lead towards rebuilding back a unified country.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Edwin and Amor, for your insights. very, very interesting and very, well, like I said, you'll find out tomorrow. Maraming salamat. Okay. So folks, that's it for this particular episode, and this is our 6th in optics, and we hope that we have helped you understand a little bit better what the communications game is really in this process. Just a few final thoughts. This really has been an extraordinary election. I'm old enough to remember quite a number of elections and non-elections in the past, and I frankly have not seen anything like this, at least on this scale. You have on one hand, for example, something that could not have been contemplated, let's say 2 or 3 decades before, the Marcoses rebuilding the brand, okay, and seems to be, at least if you believe the opinion polls, on the verge of winning again the presidency. So, it's one thing to rebuild the brand, but it's also, well, how do I say it? And I'm saying this on a personal note. There's a brand that you can rebuild, but there's a core product, and you might say that, the core product here, unfortunately, in the Philippines is that we have a politics that's still very much run by families. You can call it clan politics. It's also called political dynasties. No? So, will this still continue in this, what Amor was saying, in a decentralized age? No? Let's see. That's one of the questions that this elections is going to raise. The campaign, on the other hand, of VP Leni, well, she started out late, as Edwin pointed out, and she started out with, very little, if any, resources. With those kinds of caveats, you gotta give her credit for what's happened so far. Whether that's enough to win the elections, we'll see. But the long-term question is, what will happen to the Abonado army? Okay? Will just this dissipate, or will it stay around? And will this, as Amor said, will this invigorate Philippine democracy? That's another interesting question that probably won't be answered right away. But anyway, one final note, I'm just reminded, remember that discussion about Gumbursa and how Gumbursa became Majoha, okay? Well, the thing is, we've been discussing in optics, things that are so current. We have, it's under our noses, right in front of our faces. But we're making history here, and history is, unfortunately, can be so unkind. And so let's not be Majoha. Let's have a sense of history, okay? On that optimistic note, again, I am Mon Isberto, and this is Optics, the politics of perception.